And retired Lieutenant General Richard Newton is joining us now live. He is a veteran of more than 30 years in uniform, including as a U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff. Lieutenant General, good morning. I just want to start with this breaking news today, this continued aid to Ukraine on behalf of the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris speaking today, also sending 2 Patriot missile systems that have been delivered to Poland. What do you make of it?
Well, good morning, Rutabaga. Again, I think it's a very good move on the U.S. part to have the vice president in Poland. By the way, she'll continue her trip to Romania, which is another key NATO ally as well. But sending aid, I think, is very important at this point, and we will need to continue to do so. As she mentioned, the House has passed a $13.6 billion package that presumably will go to the Senate. That includes defense as well as humanitarian, as Marley reported on. So I think that is key and essential that the United States shows that it stands toe-to-toe with not only Poland, but also with the NATO allies.
So does this rift over the fighter jets and who will take responsibility for delivering them, if at all, seem to have been put behind them?
No, I think it's still a very tough issue, and I think it's one that they need to really discuss in closed doors. And I'm sure Vice President Harris will be discussing that with the leadership in Poland. We need to get to the bottom of that because it is a non-starter, obviously according to the Pentagon, but also the State Department, in my view as well. We do not want to raise any level of potential direct conflict between the United States and Russia. And so I think it's important that they not, as Poland asked, to send the fighters to Ramstein Air Base, which is U.S. Air Base in Germany, and then to Ukraine. I think we've got to come up with another solution. I believe the Ukrainians need these aircraft vitally. I think it'll be a major, what I call a force multiplier for the Ukrainian Air Force, but also for the Ukrainian military and the people as they fight this invasion.
And let's talk about, we've talked about it before, the targeting of civilian areas. Now this maternity hospital is just horrific. Do you think Putin will face charges of war crimes in the international court?
Well, Robert's reporting is gut-wrenching. There's no way around that. And I do believe that Putin has gone well beyond the pale of, again, what Marley reported at the board regarding, levels of war criminal allegations that I think we placed against him. But to put that into context, Putin does not have, he's off his timing. His army is not performing very well in the invasion. Weather is hampering him. He's getting bogged down. He's having to call up conscripts. So the next page in his playbook, Rutabaga, is to, again, use indiscriminate bombing against civilians to try to break the will of the Ukrainian people. And so that is, again, this is Russian Doctrine 101. They do not have, by the way, the precision weapons to go after specific military targets. And if they're bogged down, if they're slowed down by stiff Ukrainian resistance, they will go to these civilian targets that we're seeing on our screen right now. Robert reported 18 hospitals. I think you're going to see many more civilian targets in the coming days and weeks.
And let's talk about what some theorize is Putin's potential endgame. 82% of respondents in our exclusive NewsNation poll saying they are worried about Russia potentially invading other countries. The American appetite to get involved in another war isn't there based on these poll results. How much does American public sentiment play into the decision about whether or not we intervene?
Well, I can guarantee you the president and his national security team are also worried about, again, this invasion and this war essentially going outside the borders of Ukraine. The American, again, sentiment or views, or however you want to put it, do play a key role in this. And I believe it's important that the president continues to speak to the American people so that the American people understand that he has got his grip on this as best he possibly can, conferring with our NATO allies and standing toe-to-toe with NATO. But it's very important that the president communicates, as I mentioned, to the American people so that they understand, and we continue to understand the implications of should efforts fail in Ukraine, or as we see these horrendous war shots continue, that we're doing everything we can to de-escalate, as Secretary Blinken said, de-escalate the conflict so that we do not have a direct confrontation with Russia. That is absolutely the most essential bottom line position we should have at this point.
All right, General, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.